Welcome to the MSDW Podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com, and my guest this week is Kuldeep Gupta, a project delivery head at CloudFronts Technologies with a specialization in project service and program management. As part of his responsibility for project delivery excellence, Kuldeep is also an experienced implementer of Microsoft Dynamics 365 project service automation. And on this episode, we dive into some of the fundamentals of the PSA product, including improvements over the 3 versions, progress toward the next generation that builds off of Microsoft Project Online, and the needs of customers asking for PSA-based solutions today. This episode of the MSDW Podcast is sponsored by ClickLearn. ClickLearn is the market-leading solution for creating user instructions, e-learning, and process videos for business software. ClickLearn will automate writing your business-critical walkthroughs, saving you 80% of the time you now spend creating them manually for Dynamics 365 Business Central, Finance and Operations, Customer Engagement, and most of your other IT systems. The ClickLearn solution produces your walkthroughs in 8 different formats from a single source, including written documentation, hands-on labs, videos with automated effects, and voiceover. On top of that, ClickLearn has a virtual assistant that guides the users within the live system. Simply record your work process in Dynamics. With one click, ClickLearn produces your walkthroughs in all formats and in more than 45 languages and 135 dialects. It creates a complete e-learning portal with full tracking and scoring, and upgrades your work instructions as you upgrade your Dynamics platform with no manual effort on your part. Hi, Kuldeep. Thank you for joining today.
Hey, Jason, it's my pleasure for inviting me, and I'll be more than obliged to talk about PSA.
Yeah, we should mention that you have been writing and publishing articles on MS Dynamics World for quite a while now. So it really is about time, I would say, that we talked and got to know you a little better and a little more about your experience and your learnings on the Dynamics 365 project service automation tool and where it's going and how you're using it with your clients. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to chatting here. So why don't we start maybe for people who don't know you? Can you tell us a little more about yourself, your career and CloudFronts?
Certainly. Well, a little short, brief introduction about myself. I am Kuldeep Gupta, and I'm working as a delivery head in CloudFronts Technology since last 5 years. I take care of the deliveries of all the projects to ensure they are successfully delivered to the clients. And the fascinating stuff is to do all of that. I use internally PSA from end to end entirely. My organization runs on PSA right from sales up to project deliveries up to invoicing. Well, and that's about the introduction about me. Then I'm coming to PSA. Where did I get hit with PSA? It was around 3 years back when PSA was introduced, the first version of PSA. And I got an opportunity to evaluate that PSA version since we were also at CloudFronts doing a PM app on top of CRM. And hence at that moment itself, PSA was introduced. So was a craving for me to see how different are we than what Microsoft is doing, and is licensing getting clashed with what we are doing. So as I was evaluating PSA, I saw Microsoft's documentation was a little lacking, not that great. And then I had to write down all the notes of my findings in one place. And suddenly I found that it turned out to be a nice ebook with certain modifications that I published when there was no documentation from Microsoft's side. And it's there on my company's website, cloudfronts.com, where you can download the ebook that I've written. And there is more than 400 plus downloads till date for the ebook, including people from Microsoft. And since then, I've not stopped from V1 to V2 to V3. The latest version is V3.11, and I am just loving it.
Yeah, and I'm going on memory here, but the PSA product essentially came out of the emergence of the field service application and the work that Microsoft was doing around universal resource scheduling, and I guess those developments were enabled Microsoft to kind of formulate the project service automation tool as a new product as well, right? Is that right?
Exactly. So I'll correct a little bit here. Okay. Universal resourcing was actually developed for field service. You're right. That is the correct part. Um, but that also facilitated PSA because what project managers actually do, they do the resource allocation of people, they do allocate their team members onto certain projects, certain tasks. And what better than something that is already existing for field service could have been used for PSA was the intention before to bring in PSA actually. And then what they did is blended well the sales part of CRM, which was already existing, to the PSA part with universal resource scheduling, and hence the entire product just evolved in such a way.
Mm, okay, and with your own use of PSA, so CloudFronts is using it as an organization, right? And
Correct.
are you mostly focused on that, or are you also seeing your clients or overseeing client deployments of it?
Yeah, we are also using it internally from sales to project management, resource scheduling, and just not that, we do a lot of decision making basically by using the data that we get from PSA. I'll come back to it shortly. Um, we use up till invoicing. So my accounting department is also connected to PSA and they use it for invoicing. Not only that, we have done multiple deployments of PSA with multiple clients across USA and as well as in India. We have a couple of clients who are using that.
Um, looking back at some of the articles that you've published on our site, and I know that's really a subset, I think, of all the work on writing you've done about it, but time entry and time and expense management seems to be one of the most complex and sort of very detailed areas of the product, and also probably one of the key elements of what makes it valuable to organizations. Is I don't know. Can you say anything about um, you know gaining a good understanding of what the product does and how important the time and expense aspect of it is?
So you brought in a very right thing. I mean, I have been at many events of Microsoft and met many partners. And the basic query that they ask is what is the capability of PSA to handle the time entries and the expense entries? Is it really feasible to do that? And I said that is the key of what PSA offers is you can actually keep a track of what the expenses are getting entered, what the time entries in is being done by people around you, and hence those expense and time entries can eventually be converted in the actuals and then be invoiced to the customer. So PSA has done a fantastic job in terms of giving a beautiful solution or a module where the resources, everybody who is working on project is facilitated to come on that project and do their time entry of what efforts they have put in, which eventually can be approved by the project manager and hence can be directly invoiced to the customer.
Right. Um, and some of those touch points are really interesting to me. I want to go back to that. But first, I just thought maybe we should also touch on something you mentioned earlier, which was sort of the evolution from V1 to V2 to now, pretty deep into V3 of PSA. Can you explain a little more about why V3 is an improvement, is unique compared to previous versions?
Yeah, sure, sure. So V1, we'll start with V1, then get into V2 slowly, then V3, which is the best version. V1, it started, they were just fresh and new. Hence, a lot of issues, bugs at that time, and the interface was classic Microsoft CRM interface, if you remember, which was like an old kind of field and the navigation the what do you say the
Navigation?
transitions from one navigation was the business process flow was um, little tacky, and it was not that easy user friendly. There were a lot of bugs behind the scenes when we are doing time entry and when you were importing it from your resource bookings that you do, and then um, universal resource scheduling was not that beautiful in look and feel, and then not very user friendly. From that, it evolved itself to first in V2, resolving all those bugs and the issues that were present in V1. Then it moved to V3 to try resolving the user interface and look and feel and the navigation aspect, which was the bestest of all, which came up with unified interface, and hence the navigation issues with all the bugs that were there in existing systems were almost, you can say, close to 80-85% were resolved. And with 3.11 that is in now, um, almost you can say it is more than 90% accurate, and the system really works well without issues.
Hmm. Excellent. So going back to something that that you touched on earlier, one of the interesting things to me, one of my favorite things in enterprise software is integration touch points. I think it's one of the most interesting things, and it's really great when they work well. But it's
Yeah, yeah.
obviously a big challenge too. PSA would appear to me to have some very critical touch points with other with other systems, with business processes that reach across systems. You talked about invoicing. Are there other common integration points that either that you use internally or that your clients frequently ask for?
I guess you've touched a very beautiful point here, and which I can also call it something that PSA is still lagging in terms of invoicing. And you're bang on target. I really appreciate. Um, we still lack. When I do a pitching of PSA to any of the clients, and when it comes to any of the accounts department where I go into the discussion, the sales is happy, the project managers are happy, the resource manager is happy. The accounts always has some issue because it doesn't have revenue recognition as a module which should have been there in order to classify it as a full-fledged product, which for me can be a mini ERP kind of, which
Right.
covers the entire division of yours, right from the sales to project management to resource management to invoicing. It does covers invoicing, but the end last mile you call it as revenue recognition because your customer makes payment. You are not able to recognize those payments. The part payments cannot be recognized. You cannot mark. So that revenue recognition piece is missing. Hence, we are dependent on other third party tools wherein the integrations come into play. As I wanted to answer your integration piece also, there are a couple of tools that we use in house to do that part of pieces, which are with QuickBooks. We have an integration, so the invoice by our accounting department is generated in PSA, and hence we do that last piece of integration with QuickBooks, and the invoices are sent out over there, and then the last mile thing of revenue recognition part is done in QuickBooks.
Okay. I would imagine with Dynamics 365 customers, you're also dealing. Do you deal with some that have a more a bigger ERP who already have AX or already have Nav Business Central or NetSuite or another or other sort of kind of well-known ERPs that you have to integrate with?
Uh, at the moment, I haven't been doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I got an opportunity to do the pitching with the customer who was using NetSuite, and it was really fun. It was a paid exercise that we did for around 40 hours, odd hours, and it was really interesting that it actually could do well with the integration with NetSuite and a lot of features that we could actually see NetSuite had. PSA didn't had, but PSA had and NetSuite didn't had to come out well in terms of sales and other stuff. So yeah, I got that an opportunity, but couldn't
Mm.
do much inside that.
And I know there's been there's been talk, maybe it's a little beyond this conversation, but there's been theorizing or discussion in the past about sort of where D365 PSA is a good choice versus the project service capabilities within F&O, which has its own project service approach to project service.
You put me in dilemma actually. I really don't understand why this is there, but there are, yes, when you say F&O, project service is also one of the project management module which is existing in F&O. But if you look at it, it is not a complete piece as PSA is, since it doesn't have that universal resource scheduling capacities. It cannot do resource allocations well, and hence it is just a project that can be put inside, and then you can't do much with it as you can do with like scheduling and schedule boards, and all that stuff is not there in F&O product. Hence, PSA itself is a more mature product in that terms when you call it as a project management platform.
Yeah. I want to look to the future a little bit. And my understanding of where project service automation is going is that it will, and I wrote an article about this in May, that it will, and the headline I used was that Microsoft was going to reformulate it using MS project tools. And I'll maybe put a link to that in the description of this episode. But essentially it's going to be integrated into the larger Microsoft Project Online vision, that the project planning element will. Well, I'm sorry. So let me see. Microsoft will be replacing certain PSA tools with ones from Project for the work breakdown structure and Gantt and task scheduling. This is what Microsoft said publicly. And in your experience, I guess. I know there's sort of limited amount of what you can say, but have you seen that Microsoft is sort of continuing to make progress with working through some of these details?
Definitely, and since I am under NDA, I have that preview access. Fortunately, with me, with what Microsoft said, and I can say that they're definitely making good progress, and people will definitely love what they're doing. And so, have you heard it right that they are making a lot of progress with the scheduling aspect of what was actually missing in PSA uh, up till V3 also is something that can be beautifully done in V next version of PSA, which is called as Project Online. I guess they are going to be renaming it also from PSA to Microsoft Project um, from the next version of it.
Right.
And yep, it's gonna be beautiful, and you can use MS Project, collaborate with PSA, new version of your PSA, and then use the entire feature set of what Microsoft Project can offer you and do a better scheduling. Is only what I can tell you as of now, since I'm under NDA.
Understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's the project team's use of Azure and the Common Data Service. I think is probably one of the underappreciated or underreported sort of things that I think is probably going to strengthen the Power Platform overall.
True.
It's not. I don't hear people talk about it too much. I don't live in the Microsoft project world either, so I don't see it as much perhaps. But I think that's fascinating that they've used it. I think it was actually cited in a recent interview that Charles Lamanna, the sort of CVP of Citizen Developer Platform, essentially Power Apps and the related technologies, was talking about recently, that the idea that project service capabilities around CDS are actually a very kind of good example of how the platform's evolving. So yeah, I'm excited to see what's going to happen too. I appreciate that you can sort of only say a very limited amount right now, but it's good to know that there's progress going on with it.
Yeah. Great.
All right, what else are you sort of when it comes to project service, what else are you either talking to your customers about or sort of looking ahead to with delivering these kinds of solutions?
So we have varied kind of customers. So I'll give you an example of one of the customers that came to us is one of the major construction companies, project management arm, and they approached us with a request that they want to use PSA for doing project management of their project management that they do for the construction companies. And it was fun to do pitching to them to understand what exactly the requirement and when you call project management, the construction companies are one. If you can cater them, you are doing the best because the most complex project management schedule is of a construction company in the real world. So it was fun to demonstrate them. They loved the product and the fact that they could actually do uh, connect the opportunity, the leads to contract quotation, and then they could actually do the scheduling of the project, and then they could actually allocate the resources. Um, and not just that, behind the scenes, they could use the entire power of CRM. Well, they had a lot of customization, and it was not just pitching. They are our existing customer, and we are taking them live somewhere around end of December. And it is nice. They know about PSA, and people have started talking about PSA a lot of lately. So it's fun also, but a stress also with what is coming out new and how the transition will happen. Because I've heard people getting nervous about when they hear that the new version is coming up with CDS and a lot of Power App stuff and all that stuff. As you said, people are also nervous. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen next.
When you do talk to an interested company like that, I've just been reading a CRM book written by analyst Paul Greenberg, and just recently had him on the podcast as well, and it got me really thinking about sort of the way companies are approaching their investments in technology from a customer perspective. Do you tend to what are some of the reasons that a company like this one you described will call you in? Are they thinking more of internal efficiencies, or are they often thinking of the benefit to their customers' experience in working with them?
What a nice question. Basically, what one of the reasons they gave us was they had to deal with multiple tools. One tool for doing sales, one tool for doing their quotations, and then the invoicing was separate because they don't have much complex requirements for invoicing. And then the project managers were on some other third-party applications that they got built out outside and all that stuff. And hence, when the person, the CEO, CIO who contacted us, just went through PSA, and it was all connected at one place, and hence the power of data that could come out of it, because we made a lot of good Power BI reports for them, and hence I think when everything is clubbed together in one place, the power of the data that comes out is humongous, and that is what they like most.
All right, excellent. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap up?
Well, I just want to say that it's a good product. Since I love it, I'm using it day in, day
Yeah.
out, and I can't imagine without PSA what can be done next. And I'm desperately waiting for the new version to come out. And I would say, people, there's not much change, just the last message that don't worry, what is going to come up next is for the betterment. And it is not going to be a huge transition. It is going to be a better transition, would I would call out to be with the new version of PSA that is coming out. And I would say, have fun. You have any issues, you can come back me, contact me for any of your queries. I'd be obliged to help you.
Excellent. And how do you find the customers tend to get familiar with the product? Is it can they spin up a trial themselves, or is it best to work with a firm like CloudFronts to really get introduced to it?
See, definitely CloudFronts can also certainly help with it. They can spin up their trial on their own, but since it is not an, I would calibrate, very difficult, also not a very easy solution also to go around with it by your own. We can certainly help them understand the entire flow, since it is a lengthy flow. And the flow can be from first you create a lead, then calibrate it to make it to an opportunity, then from an opportunity you create an opportunity quotation. The quotation is there, the quotation line and entries are there. From there you make your contract, the contract lines are there, then you connect it to a project, then the project scheduling, resource scheduling, time entries, expense entries, and then ultimately invoicing. So certainly if you hear this out loud, it is not an easy flow that comes directly to your mind for an evaluation, and you need a handhold for certain duration of time. Even after you do an implementation for a customer, an existing customer, he or she needs some sort of help for certain duration, and hence we have also entered into some kind of master service agreements with such customers to do an handhold. And yeah, they need some amount of training even though your implementation is done.
Well, Kuldeep, thank you so much for taking the time to be on here. It's fun to finally chat with you. Again, we really have enjoyed all the articles you've published with us. We hope we can continue to do it with you.
Thank you so much, Jason. It was fun to speak to you too.
This has been another episode of the MSDW Podcast. My thanks to Kuldeep Gupta of CloudFronts Technologies for joining me today. If you want more information, check out the summary of the podcast, where we'll include links to some of Kuldeep's work. You can also email me, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com, with any other feedback. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World signing off.